what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. I'm Ben. I am that crazy guy that bought two of the exact same motorcycles to do comparison videos on. However, I can tell you from first-hand experience just getting off of both of these bikes, there are an unbelievable amount of differences between these two, and that is exactly why I decided to purchase them both and ride them at the same time. I will also be doing a build series sort of simultaneously on both of them to try to turn them into bikes that can handle everything from adventure riding and camping to nasty single track and muddy two track, things that I made my Gen 3 and Gen 2 KLR do, and even the XR650 do, but I think these bikes should be much more up to the task to all that after I'm done with them. For now though, let's hop on these two. We'll run the same circuit, a little bit of asphalt, a little bit of gravel, and a little bit of highway, and see which one I enjoy riding more. I think the answer will surprise a lot of you guys, but before we get there, I'd like to know what you guys think. Which one is going to be my favorite, and which one would you pick, and why? Now let's take these big bore dinosaurs out for a rip. A little bit of rain moving through. Hopefully we don't run into any of that. Ooh, this bike has a mean feel to it. What's up, cow? No sport bike, but she's got some snap. Oh! Boy, is it windy. Let's not drop this in the ditch. I don't know what exactly it is, but this bike feels like deep-chested, I guess, if that makes any sense. I don't know, I think it's just the way that the engine kind of sounds and feels, kind of through all of the contact points. I don't know, it just feels like a good, solid old machine, which is, I suppose, exactly what it is, but I don't know, that's just definitely the feeling that I get when I'm on this thing. Great. Well, hopefully it's tight. Well, this sure affords you a good vantage point standing up on these pegs. I think I will try to lower these a bit. This is just maybe a little bit higher than I think I really need to be, and then that'll essentially bring my bars up a little bit, which I would also like. Might make my legs a little bit more comfortable when sitting down too, but honestly this bike really does feel pretty good in a seated position now, especially with the new risers and chub bar on here. I don't really get too much for vibration through the bars either, at least not any unwanted vibration. I mean, you want to be able to feel the bike humming along a little bit so you know what gear you're in and whether you got to shift up or down. I think because this thing is so high off of the ground, it takes a little bit more to kind of get it to, I guess, just do whatever you're going to ask it to do as far as leaning one way or the other. You can steer with the throttle, and that makes direction changes a little bit easier and faster, but I think I can, I don't know, I mean, I guess I should reserve judgment until I get on the DR here, but I think I can see where this thing maybe doesn't maneuver quite as easily. Just tooling around like this, I mean, this suspension, 13 inches of ground clearance, you certainly don't need that where I am right now, and I think it does kind of have a negative effect on the handling, but this thing definitely feels much more solid and planted on just about every terrain. But a good old 0 to 60 here. Whoa! Okay, maybe not. Okay, we'll have to try that again. I've never had a bike that's been an issue on. I guess we'll have to counterbalance here. All right, let's try that one more time. Here. Ready, go. Oh my gosh! All right, there it was. Oh, I love these machines. For some reason I had it in my head that this thing didn't really shift all that smooth, and I mean, I guess that the clutch was kind of hard to pull. I don't know if it's just that the bars are in a different spot, or I guess maybe I've just kind of grown used to this and the DR a bit, or what, but I don't know, I'm not really noticing that today. I guess maybe I'm just enjoying it enough that it doesn't even cross my mind, but sure seems like she's riding nice. And if we put it down a gear and go around a corner on new tires, we'll take it easy. It's no sport bike, but it has, I think, just all about the power you need. Yeah, I mean, definitely a fun bike to ride. Of course, you need to understand what you're getting on, and that even though it does have a decent amount more power than a bike like the KLR, well, similar power, but much less weight, so better power to weight ratio. I mean, it definitely feels like a snappy, aggressive bike, and I kind of wonder how much of that has to do with the fact that it does not have a cush drive, meaning between basically your engine and the back wheel, there is no sort of buffer, which is why you have to, or very, very definitely should, replace the front sprocket on here with one that the spline area is a bit wider. And if you guys missed that video, feel free to check it out. I would definitely recommend it if you're thinking about one of these bikes. Other than that, from what I've been told, these bikes should pretty much be good to go. I think the CDI box once in a while will have some issues, so people have suggested to pick up an extra one and just kind of keep it on the bike, and then if you ever have a problem with it, you'll be ready to switch it out on the trail. But other than that, doesn't really seem like there's too much that goes wrong with these. As far as longevity goes, I don't really think they're necessarily designed to last as long from an engine, at least the combustion portion of the engine standpoint, compared to like a DR or a KLR, where I think a lot of people ride those up to 30,000 miles or way more without ever having to worry. Well, I shouldn't say that. I guess sometimes if you mind the oil burning, you have to change the rings out of the KLR, but they can run for a long time, where this bike, I think, is more here for the party and here for a bit of a shorter period of time. Not to say that you can't get a lot of miles out of it. Kind of makes me wonder if the type of person that's going to ride one of these bikes with 13 inches of ground clearance and no cush drive is maybe going to push it a little bit harder than a DR650, maybe a KLR650, probably. I mean, this bike is just not meant really for the same thing as the KLR is, but I think with some mods, I think this thing will be one heck of a lightweight adventure bike. Wheelie over the cow poop. Maybe I won't get to take the DR for a ride right away. Uh-oh. Hopefully that stays north. I better hurry up. Now, one thing I mentioned on the DR is that the seat isn't shaped sort of like this one is, and I guess I should say front to back, like that. This is just kind of a specific pocket that you can sit in, and if you sit any further back, then you're kind of on the downward angle of it. So, I don't know, I mean, it kind of gives you less comfortable options, I guess, or places to sit. Oh! You gotta remember that ground is a long way down. Still definitely manageable, though, even with my inseam height of 31 inches. Of course, you have to be prepared to sort of shift yourself to the side of the seat so you can actually get your leg all the way down. And of course, keep in mind that the seat concept seat that I've got on here is an inch lower than the stock XR seat would be. Ooh, I can feel that wind blowing us around now. there's a little bit of rain. About 70 indicated on the dash. You can definitely say that I would be much more comfortable out here on a bike like the KLR, but of course without any wind protection, it's kind of hard to expect anything else. I don't really think that this is the goal of most people that are going to buy this type of bike, but that being said, I think it definitely is possible and not something that I would specifically try to avoid. I'll bet a lot of what I like about this bike as far as the power delivery goes and the feeling that it gives you is because of the lack of cush drive, which is kind of interesting. I never really thought that I would see that as a positive, and of course it's not really the best thing for longevity of any of the components, but it does make for an interesting feeling. Let's do a brake check here from the first white thing to the second. Ooh, don't want to lose it on the new tires. Yeah, definitely has more than enough stopping power. Yeah, I can hear that front starting to slide a little bit. Seems like depending on what gear you're in, you definitely can pick up some vibrations here and there, both kind of on like the low end if you're lugging it, of course, and a little bit on the top end when it kind of comes time to shift. But for the majority of the ride, it's honestly not nearly as vibey, I guess, or as brappy as you would think a giant single cylinder bike would be. It's really just in general kind of a nice bike to ride. That is definitely not the case with every bike. I've definitely been on some machines where you get off and your hands just don't feel right. Certainly a good bike for sightseeing. And it is nice to be able to stand up and stretch yourself out after a bit. Standing and shifting works very well, actually. No problems there. The tank bag on here does get in the way a little bit. Not too bad though. And this is the large. Now, how about in some slow-moving, nasty stuff here, where I might have to grab the clutch with one finger. Whoa! Definitely not the lightest feeling bike that I've ever ridden, but I do own a TW200. Oh, there's a tree down here. Yikes. Okay, well, I guess I'm not going that way. Well, this is a good test, I suppose, huh? Just hanging off of it. And switch. Don't let it go that way. Doable. Not something that I would recommend to somebody who is new to riding, but certainly if you've got a little bit of dirt skills under your belt, whoa, certainly a good bike to do some kind of gnarly stuff on, honestly, even with the stock gearing. May have to find an alternate route home this time. I guess maybe I'll goof around enough that hopefully that'll pass. So I'm actually gonna hop off here for the first big thing that I've noticed, and that is basically just how much lighter the DR650 feels, which is weird because it's actually heavier than the XR, but I think just because everything, I mean mostly the heaviest part of the bike, which is the motor, is just so much closer to the ground. Now of course that means we don't get nearly the same amount of ground clearance, but if you're not looking to run a whole bunch of single track or jump logs, which I don't know how many people on big 650s are interested in that sort of thing, but the XR I think would be the obvious choice there. However, this bike, I mean, takes like absolutely nothing to lift up off of the side stand, which means obviously moving it around off-road or in the garage or whatever is just going to be much easier. Getting on it is of course much easier. Getting your feet to the ground is much easier. It doesn't feel like it's going to fight you to the ground as much. It's also much more bouncy, and that I think really does kind of affect the entire ride. It doesn't really matter where we're at. It really, I think, does change things. So if you upgrade the suspension, which everybody pretty much suggests on these, that would change, of course, but it is something I think to keep in mind out of the box. It's also not nearly as intense as far as the gearing goes. Woo! That doesn't mean you can't get the front wheel up. Just got to use the muscles a little bit to yank it up. It is certainly not slow though, and I think just kind of getting things off the ground is where this struggles. And if you guys have seen the videos that we did on my buddy Jason's 06 DR650, you know that it doesn't take too much. It doesn't really take hardly any money at all, actually, to kind of wake that up a little bit and to get that front to come up. And we will definitely do that. So stay tuned if you want to see those videos or check out the ones on my buddy's bike. What is it about this? I bet it is just the fact, pretty much exactly what I explained at the beginning there, that this thing just feels lower to the ground. And that's not like that's any secret. I mean, anything that you look at as far as a performance motorcycle or car or four-wheeler or anything, if you want better handling, you lower it. I mean, that's the best way to get your weight down low, get everything kind of planted. It feels better, even if the suspension isn't as good. So I think that's why when I get on this bike and I get on gravel, I just want to go, where the XR, I just feel more reserved. And I think that honestly is because of that top heaviness. And when you're just on that bike, you really don't notice it. I mean, that bike felt so much lighter to me at first than the old Gen 3 KLR, and of course still would. But this bike, like I said, even though it's heavier, it definitely feels much lighter, much less like it's gonna come out from under you too. I mean, it really is. It's honestly kind of amazing how much of a difference it makes. Oh, that's a good storm over there. Whoa, that's a big old snapper. Squishy in the actual lever feel. Oh, is that moving this way? God dang it, I bet it is. Oh, man. I'm gonna get rained on. I forgot what I was doing here now, too. Don't worry, bud. Just want to get a look at you. How's it going? Just crawled out of the swamp. And I think I actually kind of said that the hand controls and honestly even the foot controls, the brake and the shifter on the XR do just feel better and less sloppy, and there's kind of a bit of slop in here, and I don't know, you know, how much of that has to do with the number on the dash here. The XR, I don't think even has 1,000 miles on it yet, where this has got just over 6,000. So, I mean, things would kind of loosen up with time, of course, but I don't know that they'd loosen up that much. And I mean, I think I just like the feeling of how everything works, not so much that, you know, this feels like it's worn out or anything. I think it's just straight off the factory floor. I believe that I would feel kind of the same way. Now, of course, I'm not saying that this is awful or that I'm wishing that I wouldn't have bought this or anything like that. Just, again, something that I've noticed. Like that turkey. What are you doing, turkey? How many more of theirs are ya? Just a lone turkey. If you say so. I do kind of wonder how switching the bars out will affect the sort of handling feeling that I'm saying is so much nicer, or not so much nicer, but feels better for road type riding, even gravel road riding. I don't know that it'll change that much. I mean, obviously it'll change the feel a bit, but I definitely noticed jumping on this that I am not nearly as happy in this sort of hunched over position. I think for me personally anyways, and I think for a lot of you guys too, having bars up a little bit higher and a little bit farther forward would be nice. As far as standing on this one goes, I can definitely tell that I would also like the pegs a little bit lower. I would also rather not have them sag 6 inches when I step on them, but with the sort of grippy feel that the metal pegs have, I mean, this is really okay. Having the bars again higher, not swept back as much, will feel better too. But of course, that's something that I'll probably do with every bike I ever own. This definitely seems like it has less intense engine braking as well, and of course the fact that this one actually has a cush drive might have a lot to do with that feeling. I've definitely noticed, and I don't know why I didn't put this together right away. I guess I kept saying how intense the XR felt, you know, right from the get-go, that guess I just thought it was more vibey than this bike is. And I really had it in my head that this thing was so smooth, and I guess I always said that it was smooth until you gave the throttle a crank, and then all of a sudden it kind of fires into life. And then it honestly, I think, does vibrate a lot more than the XR does. And when you're just cruising, that's not the case. I mean, it's plenty smooth now, but as soon as you hit that throttle, everything just sort of... and I've got to say, I definitely have felt a few vibrations at certain RPMs through the bars, and honestly right now through the foot pegs, that I don't like. And like I said on the XR, I mean, no matter what you're on, even a car that you sit in, you get a sort of a sense for what the engine and just all the moving parts, even the tires on the ground and how you feel that through the suspension. There's a feeling, I guess lots of feelings and sensations you get from being on a machine, and I would say just about all of them on the XR were pleasant, where this, there are definitely some that are not, and I didn't realize that. And again, it's not something that is making me regret purchasing this, and to be honest, I mean, I purchased both of these to do comparison videos on, not that that means I can't enjoy them, of course, but I'm kind of surprised by that. I thought this bike was like super smooth. Oh, it's super confidence inspiring. I'm much more willing to be an idiot on this than I am the tall XR, which, I mean, I think definitely is something to consider. I always thought seat height was important for feeling comfortable getting your feet to the ground, which when you're starting out, that is honestly probably the most important thing. You should not buy a bike that is too tall for you to begin with. To learn on off-road, you need something that you're comfortable with, plain and simple. Is there something standing there? I don't think so. It is kind of nice to be able to see everything, but I can still stand up and get, I guess, a good vantage point of what's going on. If my bars were in a better spot, I would feel much more comfortable at shifting, but that is still an option on here. You can still get some beautiful scenery. Yeah, this definitely feels so much more solid, though. That the XR, as soon as I got on the gravel, and of course keep in mind we do have D Sports on here, where I've got the Waypoint tires on the XR. I know they should be the same, but they're not. We'll just have to deal with it. Maybe when the Waypoints come out for this bike, I'll stick some on here. Actually, I probably will. This does feel much more comfortable and is a lot easier to ride on gravel. So I think if you're looking for that extra ground clearance, if you need to be 13 inches off of the ground to jump logs, I mean, you're probably honestly not going to care too much about being a little bit more easy to ride and a little bit more comfy. But this is definitely a much more comfy, easy bike to ride at slow speeds and on sort of cruises rather than hard rips through the woods. Obviously, if you're looking for a single track bike, or you're looking for something that feels like a motocross bike, the XR I think is obviously the way to go. This is, I think, a much more street oriented or street friendly bike, and I don't mean to say that the XR cannot be. It's just, I think if that's what you're interested in, then this is a good bike for that. And it does make me just want to go fast, which is weird because, like I said, that XR is so intense. Maybe I should lower it. You know who you are. You've been trying to convince me the whole time without actually saying it that I should lower it. And maybe I will. Maybe I'll give that a shot. This thing definitely is a much more fun dirt road cruiser. And I honestly kind of don't mind the bars a little bit lower for this stuff. I'm kind of getting used to it a bit, but I'll still raise them up and we'll see how that changes my feeling of it. Whoa! Okay, so we almost lost the front there. So it's not like it's invincible. I think you do need to keep a bit more weight in the front than I have been, and I've said that before. We have a real hard time remembering to do that. Almost bit me hard there, but going over the bumps, I mean, this thing does not feel near as good as the XR does. I mean, having good suspension, it can definitely be a little bit more of a harsh ride, but honestly, I mean, unless you're looking for something extremely smooth and cushy, I mean, the XR is definitely out of the box so much better than this bike. I mean, it's not like you can't deal with this, but I mean, like I said, I mean, this is just a very bouncy feeling bike where I think the best way to describe the suspension and just the feeling of the XR in general is just solid. This bike definitely feels good and low to the ground and controllable, and I say easy to ride. I mean fun to ride, and that's why, like I said, I get on this and I get on gravel and I just want to go. Where that XR, I'm definitely hesitant. I was not expecting that. Interesting. I don't like these levers though. Everything feels so weird and sloppy. I gotta get some different bars on this. Hope it'll fix that. All right, let's see if we can get a 0 to 60 here without putting a wheel in the air. Ready, go. I'm extra conservative. There it was. Yeah, definitely a much easier to bike to try to do 0 to 60 on than the XR, but I guess I'm not laughing my head off, so it depends what you're looking for there, I guess. Uncontrollable giggles, or a bike that actually keeps its weight down and lets you take off halfway decent. Once we're at 60 here, it does feel a little bit better being closer to the ground as well. Not nearly as big of a difference as anything else that I've mentioned, though. You're going to get blown around more the higher up you are, but it doesn't really feel that much different. Although I guess I don't have a crosswind yet, so we'll see what happens then. Yeah, with that dive in the front end, and I don't know how much fluid I have in the front here, so that, of course, is not going to make that any better, but I think this bike is very obviously aimed more at road riding, and I don't mean that it's a road bike or that it can't do anywhere near as good off-road. I mean, like we just saw, it honestly seems like it does way better on gravel, for me anyhow, with my confidence and skill level. But I mean, I think that is definitely the feeling that most people would get switching back and forth between these two, is that this is much more of a bike that is meant for the road. The XR is definitely meant more for a lot more intense riding than just the gravel roads, I think, and that's where I think you kind of will eventually start to see that bike shine once I get it out on some single track, and once I get it maybe to Harrison Hills and that sort of thing. But maybe not. I could be wrong. I was definitely not expecting how big of a difference of a change it was on the gravel. It's actually way more of a difference on the gravel than it is anywhere else, I think. And honestly, I say that this is much more of an on-road bike, like it's a good thing, and I don't necessarily mean it that way. I think that's just specifically the intention that the engineers and people testing these bikes and giving them feedback back in the in the 80s or 90s were going for, and it definitely is very evident and clear riding the two, mostly because of the power delivery, the feeling of how harsh and sort of tuned the XR feels, where this again just kind of feels a little bit closer to the KLR, like we're sort of just out here to kind of bop around. However, that does make things a little bit squishier, a little bit more comfortable, and obviously, like I said, just kind of an easier bike to ride in general, I think. Certainly more friendly at slow speeds, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're just backing it out of the garage or whether you're trying to turn it around on some single track or on a logging road or something. As I mentioned on the XR, we've got the seat concepts on there. I also have a seat concept seat on here. This one has not been messed with, and I don't know, I guess I should ask the guy. It definitely seems more rounded at the top and kind of squishier. I think this thing has a little bit more top end stock, which I guess makes sense. The XR, I mean, they both have about the same horsepower and pretty close to the same torque. Again, this one's a couple pounds heavier, but it definitely feels like it has more get up and go when you're already at a higher speed. The XR is, obviously, I think maybe because of the shorter wheelbase, and maybe the higher center of gravity too, it's much more wheelie prone, as we saw, but I think this thing does have a little bit more top end, and even though it rattles around a bit more, I think maybe this one, not maybe, I would bet that this one is going to be happier at higher speeds and higher RPMs for longer periods of time, meaning, of course, the extent of the bike, and it does, I don't know, like I said, it definitely rattles on your way up to 60, but once you're at 60 in 6th, or 5th, not 6th, it feels like 6th, it's really a pretty smooth bike. I think I can definitely feel myself hanging off a bit more. it's a fun bike to ride, and you guys probably think that I'm saying that XR is so much better. I'm just trying to make a video comparing the two. That's dead. Great. These are honestly both great bikes, and I like them both a lot. I do kind of think I am biased a little bit more one way than the other, but I shouldn't say that before we're done with the test here. Probably not a bad idea to stop here and let that blow over anyway, huh? I'm too antsy for that, though. I'll just get on the highway and ride in the rain rather than wait it out. I really gotta work on my patience. I don't know what my problem is. I'm impatient, I guess. That's my problem. Nothing can ever wait. It's a silly way to go through life. Let's ride! Oop. Yeah, see, in the XR, if I would have tried that, I would have gone right over, probably. It's almost like the clutch lever doesn't even go all the way to the bar, does it? Like, runs into the control? Which, I mean, oh, that's because this is a different... That's a different lever. Never mind. Okay. Forget I said anything. The clutch let out on these is so different, too. This one takes, like, so long to grab, where the XR, I think, was, like, immediate. Either that or I've got that backwards in my head. It feels very different, regardless of where it actually starts to grab. This thing sure feels snappy. It's like as soon as you get out of first gear, it just, I don't know, it definitely feels snappy, which I guess maybe just means that the XR has a lower first, where this is, you know, a little bit higher, and then the rest of the range honestly seems kind of better on this, if you don't mind the rattle. Now, speaking of rattling and things falling apart and breaking, the DR650 definitely has a few more issues to sort of be aware of, or at least more that I've been made aware of. The chain roller on here, the top one, which is sort of right behind your front sprocket, kind of attached to the frame actually, which is why it can be a problem. If you fully compress the suspension and punch the throttle, the chain will actually sort of wrench on up on that guide. So my buddy Jason took his off, and I think a lot of people do that. I probably will do that on here. On this bike, being a 2018, I don't have to supposedly do any of the mods that the other mods that Jason had to do, being the neutral sensor switch, which is on this side of the case. We've got a whole video on that if you guys want to see it. Essentially, they are now Loctiting the fasteners that hold that sensor on, but previously, I think previous to 2017 maybe, and don't quote me on that, they were not doing that, and they were having problems where the plastic that the sensor is made out of, the little housing, would shrink, and then the screws are no longer holding it tight, so they can just rattle out, and then you got screws rattling around your case, which is obviously not something that you want. So that's not quite as annoying as the doohickey. I mean, it's a pretty simple fix if you don't mind taking the whole half of the engine apart and removing the clutch. It's something that I would probably do myself comfortably. Jason spends a lot more time on the inside of engines than I do, but I think it's something that is doable with a basic set of tools and a video to kind of help you through it. So I don't think it's something that I would avoid. I mean, obviously, if you can, avoid buying an older bike and you can find a newer one that has it done from the factory, it's not a big deal. The other thing is the seal retainer clip that they've now added in the newer models. Now, I'm not exactly sure what year that started either, but on all new bikes now, that's a seal right behind your front sprocket, and the pressure from the inside of the engine was actually pushing them out, I guess. Definitely don't want all your oil to come shooting out of your drive sprocket there. So definitely something to keep an eye on, be aware of, and a pretty easy fix if you end up with an older bike. If you can save yourself enough money by buying used, or buying an older one, it would probably be worth it. It would be interesting to see, I guess, if you guys are owners of either the XR or the DR, how many miles you've got on yours. As far as I know, this is kind of like the KLR, or honestly maybe even more reliable as far as longevity goes, just because you don't have stuff like the doohickey or the thermobob to worry about. I think the XR you can have some kind of overheating issues depending on the type of climate that you ride in and how hard you're pushing the bike. This having the oil cooler on it, I mean, I would think that it should be good enough, but you know, maybe a KLR that's properly modded, I would think would probably last a bit longer as far as the engine goes. I mean, obviously you can have little components fail, and I mean, that sort of stuff is kind of hit and miss and sort of hard to really quantify and understand, I think, in general. That's why I think most people are concerned about the big stuff. Like, I definitely feel myself going over those bumps and kind of continuing to do that, where you don't have any of that on the XR. But it's not uncomfortable and it's not harsh, at least not on anything that I've ridden yet. I think I would definitely prefer the ride because of the suspension from the XR over the DR. Getting a little cold out here. Gonna zip the Explorer gear up here. As always, I've got links for all the products that I've got on the bike and the products that I've got on my back and my bottom and my sides and my feet and that sort of thing. All down in the description. If you guys are interested in picking some of it up, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider using my links, because that's how we pay the bills. And I have to say an extra special thank you to my channel members. You can join for as little as $1.99 a month. Just down below the video, you click the join button and you'll get early access to all the videos that I put out as soon as I upload them and make them available to my channel members. You guys also get sort of priority in the comments. You get a little badge. Also, thanks to everybody who, you know, supports just by watching, hitting the like buttons, sharing the videos. Anytime you guys click on a video and watch one, really does help push the videos out to more people. That's the only way that YouTube knows to do that and knows that it's a good video, is if you guys watch it. And if you interact with it, it definitely helps. So huge thanks to you guys for taking the time to do that. All right, hang on, 360, we're going for a ride. Well, the foot pegs definitely move around a heck of a lot more on here. I kind of wonder if I get rid of the rubber isolation, if that'll help. I do have this just about pinned to keep it at 70 now with the wind coming across the field. I'm sure the audio is horrible. Apologize for that. We're gonna do a highway test. You gotta ride on the highway. I almost want to say it did seem like this thing got up to 70 a little bit more effortlessly. I think it probably did. It's not all that noticeable a difference, though, to be honest. I'm second guessing it pretty hard in my head right now, so I mean, they're probably both pretty close, pretty negligible difference. I think I do feel better on this bike on the highway in general, though. Even as windy as it is, or I guess maybe because it's so windy, I just feel better being closer to the ground, I think, and there probably is just no way around that. And I mean, it's silly to think that it wouldn't matter or that it wouldn't be a factor. I mean, if you're an extra foot off of the ground, you're gonna definitely feel that in every aspect. I don't think it's enough that I would avoid one bike or the other, though. I mean, again, if you're looking for the ground clearance, the XR is obviously the clear option. If you're looking for something that is going to make you feel a little bit safer and a little bit closer to the ground, I mean, when you're learning off-road or even just on the pavement, I mean, I think, you know, obviously then the decision is pretty clear, unless you're really into the XR and, you know, there's something that I said sparked your interest about that. I think those are jumps. I want to go ride there. What the heck? I don't know what I'm saying, but I gotta do my brake test here. Ready, go. Ooh, yep. Ooh, dragged the rear a bit there. The XR, I think probably partially because of the lack of squishy suspension, definitely feels like it stops better and faster. This everything just kind of, it doesn't really do much. Not like it's dangerous or something that I would, you know, avoid riding because of, but there is a difference there, I think. So the vibrations through everything that I've kind of been talking about this entire time, the more miles that I put on it, the longer I'm on it, the more I kind of forget. And that's why I think, you know, the first couple times that I was on them kind of separated from each other by, you know, a couple days or whatever, it wasn't nearly as noticeable. This bike definitely turns in and handles and takes corners on the pavement, and even just kind of does this. I mean, so much better though. That definitely is still very noticeable. So this is a much more, again, planted, comfortable feeling bike that's a lot easier to toss around, and is just going to be, I think, better in the corners and that sort of thing. But back to the vibrations though, this thing, I mean, you forget pretty quick how different they feel as far as, you know, the little bit of maybe not nice input that you get from the bars and the seat and whatever. Now that I'm thinking about it a bit, I mean, I can feel the seat vibrating a little bit, and, you know, things do get a little choppy when, like I said, when you're on the throttle, but it's not something that I think I would say is enough of a reason to put into your consideration between the two. I mean, I think once we get some different bars on here, and, you know, maybe even swap the foot pegs out for something solid mounted, I guess I shouldn't say anything. We'll do that and we'll see what happens, I guess. But either way, I mean, this is definitely a very nice bike to ride. I guess I was on a bike for a while earlier today, but my butt does feel a little bit more sore on this seat. And I think that is just because this one is a little bit more squishy, where the one on the XR is just a little bit more solid, like I like. I think I do like the ability to kind of slide around on this one a bit more. That the back just does not have as much of an incline as the XR does. I haven't really said much about the sound on this one. You get almost as much feeling as you do sound, really, when you hit the gas. It's much more noticeable, but it doesn't have quite the same sound and feeling that the XR does. I definitely appreciate both of those things on the XR more than this. Not that this is bad, but if we're going to compare them, might as well compare them, right? I think I definitely like riding this on the gravel better, but on the road, I don't know. I think on the road I had more fun on the XR. Yeah, I don't know if it's just because I was on that other bike before this one or what. I don't think so. I mean, I think I've noticed that just riding around other times too, but my butt definitely does not feel as good after riding this bike. Wow, this one, yeah, this feels definitely sloppy. Sloppy in the, whoa, and not sloppy terrible. This is an awful bike. That's not what I'm saying. Compared to the XR, this definitely feels a bit sloppier and kind of sloshier. The handling, the suspension, the clutch and the brake and the shifting, just kind of in general. But when you have to turn around in a place like this, I can definitely tell you, wow, I'd much rather do it on this bike, that's for sure. Now watch me dump it after I set that now. Oh! I don't think we're in first gear. Oh, we are. Yeah, so I guess the DR then definitely has a higher first than the XR, because I didn't feel the XR struggle one bit climbing out of that, and this thing's got the D Sports on it, so it definitely should have felt more grippy and easier to climb. Yeah, brakes feel squishy. Maybe could probably do need to move that rear pedal up. The suspension, man, I guess I didn't realize, whoa, how much of it, what's going on here? Come on, bike, let's go. How much of a difference that would make, even just going down a hill. But I mean, when you're sloshing around like that, that really affects the ride and is not confidence inspiring. I mean, of course, good suspension is going to be good, right? But it makes a huge difference. Oh. Maybe I'm wore out. I probably am. But man, come on, keep her up. There we go. The XR is so much better off-road. Even as big of a bike as that is for me, I'm much more comfortable doing that on that bike. Would not have guessed that. Well, I'm going to say that was definitely a very eye-opening experience. I knew that these bikes were very different from the hundreds of miles that I've put on both of them already, but I didn't realize that they would feel that different, especially getting off-road. I honestly can't believe how uncomfortable I was on this bike. And to be honest, that may not be entirely fair, because half of the fork fluid that was in the left side fork on this thing is all over the floor in the garage. So maybe once that's done, things will feel a little bit different, but I think it's a pretty well accepted fact that the suspension on this bike is pretty darn good. The suspension on this bike is okay. Definitely something that is comfortable and squishy, easy enough to ride out on the road, and comfy enough to do some light gravel. Honestly, makes me uncomfortable how comfortable I am on the light gravel, but definitely something that I think if you're going to do a lot of off-roading that requires the suspension to be doing a lot of moving, you're going to want to upgrade it. And I don't think there's really any way around that. You could just deal with it, and I guess that would be a workaround, but apples to apples, this one's definitely better in that department. This bike that is so much taller should be so much more uncomfortable for somebody with my 5'10" stature with a 31-inch inseam. But honestly, shifting myself off to the side a little bit pretty much takes care of most of that. This bike just seems really, really, really good off-road. That little bit extra lower of a gear with that bit of testing right there, I think I can comfortably say that this sprocket setup on here is probably the one that I'll keep. The DR, I guess I wasn't all that surprised, or shouldn't be all that surprised, to realize that this probably does need to be geared down. And once I do that, it'll definitely be interesting to see how they compare sort of on the top end then, out on the highway, and even just at 60. Even just the vibrations, I was really surprised that as smooth as I thought this bike was, this one did seem to be a bit smoother. And sure, it's intense, but I don't know, it's a good intense. All of the feelings that you get from this bike are all good, positive feelings. This one is definitely a very fun motorcycle to ride. I love this bike. I'm not saying that it's not good or that it's annoying or bad. I mean, like I said, after a couple miles, I pretty much forgot about it, but it still kind of blows my mind that it was that much different, or that I could even tell the difference between the two. I also was glad to sort of be able to test them a little bit more closely as far as the sort of upper end acceleration, because initially I thought this thing was just more intense and more powerful all the way through, but I think the DR650 definitely feels a little bit more powerful and a little bit better in sort of a passing gear or a passing speed. When you're down low, obviously it's hard to keep the front end of this thing on the ground. It's got so much power, but again, I mean, that's really just the way that it's geared. Obviously it felt a lot better really moving slow off-road, where this one did not. I don't know, it's interesting, and it'll be definitely interesting to see what happens when I switch out the sprockets on these two. Now, as far as comfort goes, with the old bars on here and the new bars on the XR, it's, again, not really a fair comparison, but both bikes definitely are something that I think could be very comfortable for somebody my size, or even somebody a bit bigger. If you're any shorter than me, or you've got any less than a 31-inch inseam, I would probably not recommend this bike unless you plan on lowering it. And to be honest, I think to get sort of the best of both worlds, because as amazing as this bike is all around, it really is impressive in the way that it feels so light, it feels so planted, it feels so connected to the ground, where this one is just kind of a little bit too high up and feels, well, basically like you're riding a 350-pound dirt bike on the road that's lifted a couple inches off of the ground. I mean, it's a very big, top-heavy feeling bike in comparison to this one. In comparison to the KLR, it feels light, it feels nimble, it feels flickable. It definitely does not corner nearly as well as this bike does. But like I said, if you lowered this thing, I think this would be an even more impressive machine. As much as I enjoyed this bike, gotta say, I did just enjoy the XR a little bit better. Very, very closely followed by the DR650, and only because I'm looking super deep into the sort of noticeable ride qualities of both of these bikes. I think with some mods, the DR would be just as good as the XR, but other than the fact that you can only go 74 miles before you have to fill this thing up, man, this just seems like a better bike for the type of riding that I want to do. Now let me know what your guys' thoughts are on these two bikes. If you've ridden either of them, or if you've ridden something else, which one do you like better and why? Do you feel the same about the things that I've mentioned? Do you feel differently? Let us know down in the comment section. If you guys want to see where the mods take my feelings, either up or down on either one of these bikes, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you guys watching along. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe. Stay swanky. Get out. Enjoy this beautiful world any chance you get. And if you can't do that right now, here's some more videos to check out in the meantime.